Hey guys, welcome back to Storytime with YDRC. Today we're going to be continuing Red Pyramid, which is the first book in the Kane Chronicles. Now, last time we left off at chapter 8, which is where we're going to start off for today. Now, this is from the perspective of Sadie. All right, so let's get started. Muffin plays with knives. Our baboon was going completely sky goddess, which was to say nuts. He swung from column to column, bouncing along the balconies, overturning pots and statues. Then he ran back to the terrace windows, stared outside for a moment, and proceeded to go berserk again. Muffin was also at the window. She crouched on all fours with her tail twitching as she were stalking a bird. Perhaps it's just a passing flamingo, I suggested hopefully. But I'm not sure Carter would hear me over the screaming baboon. We ran to the glass doors. At first, I didn't see any problem. Then water exploded from the pool, and my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. Two enormous creatures, most definitely not flamingos, were thrashing about with our crocodile, Philip of Macedonia. I couldn't make out what they were, but only that they were fighting Philip 2 against 1. They disappeared under the boiling water, and Khufu ran screaming through the great room again, bonking himself on the head with his empty Cheerios box, which I must say was not particularly helpful. Longnecks, Carter said incredulously. Sadie, did you see those things? I couldn't find an answer. Then one of the creatures was thrown out of the pool. It slammed into the doors right in front of us, and I jumped back in alarm. On the other side of the glass was the most terrifying animal I'd ever seen. Its body was like a leopard's, lean and sinewy, but with golden spotted fur. But its neck was completely wrong. It was green and scaly, at least as long as the rest of its body. It had a cat's head, but no normal cat's. When it turned its glowing red eyes toward us, it howled, showing a forked tongue and fangs dripping with green venom. I realized my legs were shaking, and I was making a very undignified whimpering sound. The cat serpent jumped back into the pool to join its companion in beating up Philip, who spun around and snapped, but seemed unable to hurt its attackers. We have to help Philip, I cried. He'll be killed. I reached for the door handle, but Muffin growled at me. Carter said, Sadie, no! You heard him, Mose. We can't open the doors for any reason. The house is protected by magic. Philip will have to beat them on his own. But what if he can't? Philip! The old crocodile turned. For a second, his pink reptilian eye focused on me, as if he could sense my concern. Then the cat snake spit out his underbelly, and Philip rose up so that only the tip of his tail touched the water. His body began to glow. A low hum filled the air, like an airplane engine starting up. When Philip came down, he slammed into the terrace with all his might. The entire house shook. Cracks appeared in the concrete terrace outside, and the swimming pool split right down the middle as the far end crumbled into empty space. No! I cried. But the edge of the terrace ripped free, plunging Philip and the monsters straight into the East River. My whole body began to tremble. He sacrificed himself. He killed the monsters. Sadie, Carter's voice was faint. What if he didn't? What if they come back? Don't say that. I recognized them, Sadie. Those creatures. Come on. Where? I demanded, but he ran straight back to the library. Carter marched up to the Shabti who had helped us before. Bring me what's it called? What? I asked. Something Dad showed me. It's a big stone plate or something. Had a picture of the First Pharaoh, the guy who united the Upper and Lower Egypt into one kingdom. His eyes lit up. Narmer! Bring me the Narmer plate! Nothing happened. No, Carter decided. Not a plate. It was one of those things that holds paint. A pallet! Bring me the Narmer pallet! The empty-handed Shabti didn't move, but across the room, the statue with the little hook came to life. He jumped off his pedestal and disappeared in a cloud of dust. A heartbeat later, he reappeared on the table. At his feet was a wedge of flat gray stone, shaped like a shield and about as long as my forearm. No, Carter protested. I meant a picture of it. Oh, great. I think this is the real artifact. The Shabti must have stolen it from the Cairo Museum. We've got to return. Hang on, I said. We might as well have a look. The surface of the stone was carved with a picture of a man smashing another man in the face with what looked like a spoon. That's normal with the spoon, I guessed. Angry because the other bloke stole his breakfast cereal? Carter shook his head. He's conquering his enemies and uniting Egypt. See his hat? The crown of Lower Egypt before the two countries united. The bit that looks like a bowling pin? You're impossible, Carter grumbled. He looks a bit like Dad, doesn't he? Sadie, be serious. I am serious. Look at his profile. Carter decided to ignore me. He examined the stone like he was afraid to touch it. I need to see the back, but I don't want to turn it over. It might damage. I grabbed the stone and flipped it over. Sadie, you could have broken it. That's what men's spells are for, yes? We examined the back of the stone, and I had to admit, I was impressed by Carter's memory. Two cat snake monsters stood in the center of the pallet, their necks entwined. On either side, Egyptian men with ropes were trying to capture the creatures. They're called ceopards, Carter said. Serpent leopards. Fascinating, I said. But what are serpipards? No one knows exactly. Dad thought they were creatures of chaos. Very bad news. And they've been around forever. This one is one of the oldest artifacts from Egypt. Those pictures were carved 5,000 years ago. So why are 5,000-year-old monsters attacking our house? Last night in Phoenix, the fiery man ordered his servants to capture us. He said to send the longnecks first. I had a metallic taste in my mouth, and I wished I hadn't chewed my last piece of gum. Good thing they're at the bottom of the East River. Just then, Khufu rushed into the library, screaming and slapping his head. Suppose I shouldn't have said that, I muttered. Carter told the shopkeeper to return the normal pallet, and both statue and stone disappeared. Then we followed the baboon upstairs. The serpipards were back, their fur wet and slimy from the river, and they weren't happy. They prowled the broken ledge of the terrace, their snake necks whipping around as they sniffed the doors, looking for a way in. They spit poison that steamed and bubbled on the glass. Their first tongues darted in and out. Ah! Ah! Khufu picked up Muffin, who was sitting on the sofa, and offered me the cat. I don't really think that will help, I told him. Ah! Khufu insisted. Neither Muffin nor cat ended in O, so I guessed Khufu wasn't trying to offer me a snack. But I didn't know what he was on about. I took the cat just to shut him up. Meow? Muffin looked up at me. It'll be all right, I promised, trying not to sound scared out of my mind. The house has protected my magic. Sadie, Carter said. They found something. The serpipards had converged at the left-hand door and were intently sniffing the handle. Isn't it locked? I asked. Both monsters smashed their ugly faces against the glass. The door shuddered. Blue hieroglyphs glowed along the doorframe, but their light was faint. I don't like this, Carter murmured. I prayed that the monsters would give up. Or perhaps Philip of Macedonia would climb back to the terrace. Do crocodiles climb? And renew the fight. Instead, the monsters smashed their heads against the glass again. This time, a web of cracks appeared. The blue hieroglyphs flickered and died. Ah! He waved his hand vaguely at the cat. Maybe if I try the Hadi spell, I said. Carter shook his head. You almost fainted after you blew up those doors. I don't want you passing out, or worse. Carter once again surprised me. He tugged a strange word from one of Amos's wall displays. The blade had a strange sword from one of Amos's wall displays. The blade had an odd crescent moon curve and looked horribly impractical. You can't be serious, I said. Unless you've got a better idea, he stammered, his face beading with perspiration. It's me, you, and the baboon against those things. I'm sure Carter was trying to be brave in his own extremely unbrave way, but he was shaking worse than I was, and if anyone was going to pass out, I feared it would be him, and I didn't fancy him doing that while holding a sharp object. Then the serpent struck a third time, and the door shattered. We backed up to the foot of Thoth's statue as the creature stalked into the great room. Khufu threw his basketball, which bounced harmlessly off the first monster's head. Then he launched himself at the serpent. Khufu, don't! Carter yelled, but the baboon sank his fangs into the monster's neck. The serpent lashed around, trying to bite him. Khufu leaped off, but the monster was quick. He used its head like a bat and smacked poor Khufu in midair, sending him straight through the shattered door, over the broken terrace and into the void. I wanted to sob, but there wasn't time. The serpent came toward us. We couldn't outrun them. Carter raised his sword. I pointed my hand at the first monster and tried to speak the Hadi spell, but my voice was stuck in my throat. Meow, Muffin said, more insistently. Why is this cat still nestled in my arm and not running away in terror? Then I remembered something Amos had said. Muffin will protect you. Was that what Khufu had been trying to remind me? It seemed impossible, but I stammered, Muffin, I order you to protect us. I tossed her onto the floor. Just for a moment, the silver pendant on her collar seemed to gleam. Then the cat arched her back leisurely, sat down, and began licking the front paw. Well, really, what was I expecting? Heroics? The two-eyed monsters bared their hands. They raised their heads and prepared to strike. An explosion of dry air blasted through the room. It was so powerful it knocked Carter and me to the floor. The serpent stumbled and backed away. I staggered to my feet and realized the center of the blast had been Muffin. My cat was no longer there. In her place was a woman, small and lithe, like a gymnast. Her jet black hair was tied in a ponytail. She wore a skin-tight leopard skin jumpsuit and Muffin's pendant around her neck. She turned and grinned at me, and her eyes were still Muffin's, yellow with black feline pupils. About time, she chided. The serpent got over their shock and charged the Catwoman. Their heads struck with lightning speed. They should have ripped her in two, but the cat lady leaped straight up, flipping 3 times, and landed above them, perched on the mantel. She flexed her wrists, and 2 enormous knives shot from her sleeves into her hands. Aha! Wait. Oh. Aha, fun! The monsters charged. She launched herself between them, dancing and dodging with incredible grace, letting them lash at her futilely while she threaded their necks together. When she stepped away, the serpent were hopelessly intertwined. The more they struggled, the tighter their knots became. They trampled back and forth, knocking over furniture, roaring in frustration. Poor things, the Catwoman purred. Let me help. Her knives flashed, and the 2 monsters' heads thudded to the floor at her feet. The bodies collapsed and dissolved into enormous piles of sand. So much for my playthings, the woman said sadly. From sand they come, and to sand they return. She turned toward us, and the knife shot back into her sleeves. Carter, Sadie, we should leave. Worse will be coming. Carter made a choking sound. Worse? Who? How? What? All in good time. The woman stretched her arms above her head with great satisfaction. So good to be in human form again. Now, Sadie, could you Can you open us a door through the duat, please? I blinked. No. I don't know how. The woman narrowed her eyes, clearly disappointed. Shame. We'll need more power then. An obelisk. But that's in London, I protested. We can't. There's one nearer in Central Park. I try to avoid Manhattan, but this is an emergency. We'll just pop over and open a portal. A portal to where? I demanded. Who are you and why are you my cat? The woman smiled. For now, we just want a portal out of danger. As for my name, it's not Muffin, thank you very much. It's Bast, Carter interrupted. Your pendant. It's a symbol of Bast, goddess of cats. I thought it was just decoration, but that's you, isn't it? Very good, Carter, Bast said. Now come. Well, we can still make it out of here alive. Carter, Chapter 9. We run from four guys in skirts. So, yeah, our cat was a goddess. What else is new? She didn't give us much time to talk about it. She ordered me to the library to grab my dad's magic kit, and when I came back, she was arguing with Sadie about Khufu and Philip. You have to search for them, Sadie insisted. They'll be fine, said Bast. However, we will not be, unless we leave now. I raised my hand. Excuse me, Mrs. Goddess Lady? Almost told us the house was safe? Bast snorted. Carter, the defenses were too easily breached. Someone sabotaged them. What do you mean? Who? Only a magician of the house could have done it. Another magician? I asked. Why would another magician want to sabotage Amos's house? Oh, Carter, Bast sighed. So young, so innocent. Magicians are devious creatures. Could be a million reasons why one would backstab another. But we don't have time to discuss it. Now, come on. She grabbed our arms and led us out the front door. She'd sheathed her knives, but she still had some wicked sharp claws for fingernails that hurt as they dug into my skin. As soon as we stepped outside, the cold wind stung my eyes. We climbed down a long flight of metal stairs into the industrial yard that surrounded the factory. Dad's work bag was heavy on my shoulder. The curved sword I'd strapped across my back felt cold against my thin linen clothes. I'd started to sweat during the Serpent attack, and now my perspiration felt like it was turning to ice. I looked around for more monsters, but the yard seemed abandoned. Old construction equipment lay in rusting heaps. A bulldozer, a crane with a wrecking ball, a couple of cement mixers, piles of sheet metal and stacks of crates made a maze of obstacles between the house and street a few 100 yards away. We were about halfway across the yard when an old gray tomcat stepped in our path. One of his ears was torn. His left eye was swollen shut. Judging from his scars, he'd spent most of his life fighting. Bast crouched and stared at the cat. He looked up at her calmly. Thank you, Bast said. The old tomcat trotted off toward the river. What is that about? Sadie asked. One of my subjects, offering help. He'll spread the news about our predicament. Soon every cat in New York will be on alert. He was so battered, Sadie said. If he's your subject, couldn't you heal him? And take away his marks of honor? A cat's battle scars are part of his identity. I couldn't. Suddenly, Bast tensed. She dragged us behind a stack of crates. What is it? I whispered. She flexed her wrists and her knives slid into her hands. She peeped over the top of the crates, every muscle in her body trembling. I tried to see what she was looking at, but there was nothing except the old wrecking ball crane. Bast's mouth twitched with excitement. Her eyes were fixed on the huge metal ball. I'd seen kittens look like that when they stalked catnip toy mice or pieces of string. Or rubber balls. Balls? No. Bast was an ancient goddess. Surely she wouldn't. This could be it. She shifted her weight. Stay very, very still. There's no one there, Sadie hissed. I started to say, Bast lunged over the crates. She flew 30 feet into the air, knives flashing, and landed on the wrecking ball with such force that she broke the chain. The cat goddess and the huge metal sphere smashed into the dirt and went rolling across the yard. Wow! Bast wailed. The wrecking ball rolled straight over her, but she didn't appear hurt. She leaped off and pounced again. Her knives sliced through metal like wet clay. Within seconds, the wrecking ball was reduced to a mound of scraps. Bast sheathed her blades. Safe now! Sadie and I looked at each other. You saved us from a metal ball, Sadie said. You never know, Bast said. It could have been hostile. Just then, a deep boom shook the ground. I looked back at the mansion. Tendrils of blue fire curled from the top windows. Come on, Bast said. Our time is up. I thought maybe she'd whisk us off by magic, or at least hail a taxi. But instead, Bast borrowed a silver Lexus convertible. Oh, yes, she purred. I like this one. Come along, children. This isn't yours, I pointed out. My dear, I'm a cat. Everything I see is mine. She touched the ignition and the keyhole sparkled. The engine began to purr. No, Sadie, not like a cat, like an engine. Bast, I said, you can't just... Sadie elbowed me. We'll work out how to return it later, Carter. Right now we've got an emergency. She pointed back toward the mansion. Blue flames and smoke now billowed from every window. But that wasn't the scary part. Coming down the stairs were 4 men carrying a large box, like an oversized coffin with large handles sticking out at both ends. The box was covered with a black shroud and looked big enough for at least 2 bodies. The 4 men wore only kilts and sandals. Their coppery skin glinted in the sun as if made of metal. That's bad, Bast said. In the car, please. I decided not to ask questions. Sadie beat me to the shotgun seat, so I climbed in back. The 4 metallic guys with the box were racing across the yard, coming at us straight for us at an unbelievable speed. Before I even had my seatbelt on, Bast hit the gas. We tore through the streets of Brooklyn, weaving insanely through traffic, riding over sidewalks, narrowly missing pedestrians. Bast drove with reflexes that were, well, cat-like. Any human trying to drive so fast would have had a dozen wrecks, but she got us safely onto the Williamsburg Bridge. I thought for sure we must have lost our pursuers, but when I looked back, the 4 copper men with the black box were weaving in and out of traffic. They appeared to be jogging at a normal pace, but they passed cars that were doing 50. Their bodies blurred like choppy images in an old movie, as if they were out of sync with the regular stream of time. What are they? I asked. Shabti? No, carriers. Bast glanced in the rearview mirror. Signs straight from the duat. They'll stop at nothing to find their victims. Throw them in the sedan. The what? Sadie interrupted. The large box, Bast said. It's a kind of carriage. The carriers capture you, beat you senseless, and throw you in, and carry you back to their master. They never lose their prey, and they never give up. But what do they want us for? Trust me, Bast growled. You don't want to know. I thought about the fiery man last night in Phoenix, how he'd fried one of his servants into a grease spot. I was pretty sure I didn't want to meet him face to face again. Bast, I said, if you're a goddess, can't you just snap your fingers and disintegrate those guys? Or wave your hand and teleport us away? Wouldn't that be nice? But my power in this host is limited. You mean Muffin? Sadie asked. But you're not a cat anymore. She's still my host, Sadie. My anchor on the other side of the duat. And a very imperfect one. Your call for help allowed me to assume human shape, but that alone takes a great deal of power. Besides, even when I'm in a powerful host, Set's magic is stronger than mine. Could you please say something I actually understand? I pleaded. Carter, we don't have a time for a full discussion on gods and hosts and the limits of magic. We have to get you to safety. Bast floored the accelerator and shot up the middle of the bridge. The 4 carriers with the sedan raced after us, luring into the air as they moved. But no cars swerved to avoid them. No one panicked or even looked at them. How can people not see them? I said. Don't they notice 4 copper men in skirts running up the bridge with a weird black box? Bast shrugged. Cats can hear many sounds you can't. Some animals see things in the ultraviolet spectrum that are invisible to humans. Magic is similar. Did you notice the mansion when you first arrived? Well, no. You were born to magic. Imagine how hard it would be for a regular mortal. Born to magic? I remembered what Amos had said about our family being in the House of Life for a long time. If magic, runs in the family, why haven't I ever been able to do it before? Bast smiled in the mirror. Your sister understands. Sadie's ears turned red. No, I don't. I still can't believe you're a goddess. All these years you've been eating crunchy treats, sleeping on my head. I made a deal with your father, Bast said. He let me remain in the world as long as I assumed a minor form, a normal house cat, so I could protect and watch over you. It was the least I could do after. She stopped abruptly. A horrible thought occurred to me. My stomach fluttered, and it had nothing to do with how fast we were going. After our mom's death, I guessed. Bast stared straight ahead out of the windshield. That's it, isn't it? I said. Dad and Mom did some kind of magic ritual at Cleopatra's Needle. Something went wrong. Our mom died and they released you? That's not important right now, Bast said. The point is, I agreed to look after Sadie, and I will. She was hiding something. I was sure of it, but her tone made it clear that the subject was closed. If you gods are so powerful and helpful, I said, why does the House of Life forbid magicians from summoning you? Bast swerved into the fast lane. Magicians are paranoid. Your best hope is to stay with me. We'll get as far away as possible from New York. Then we'll get help and challenge Zet. What help? Sadie asked. Bast raised an eyebrow. Why, we'll summon more gods, of course. All right, guys, so that's where we're going to end it off for today at chapter 10. As always, before we end it off, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. That's it for today. Bye, guys.